No, I haven't hitched a ride with two madmen. This contraption, believe it or not, is one of the highlights of this year's London International Mime Festival.
At the London International Mime Festival, acts from around the world are trying to offer something a little different.
We've got some of the best companies in the world this year.
A lot of people think of classical mime when they think about the word mime at all, but really it's a much bigger art form than that. We take the first emphasis on visual impact being the most important thing in any performance.
Because it's not language-based, it's so accessible. 54% of our audience don't have English as their first language.
Hey!
Over at Shoreditch Town Hall, a workshop.
Come back. Not bad. Hey!
It's for professional performers to learn the art of mime, which is
To make the portrait of something with your body. An idea, an emotion, a state of mind. Mime is about creating those metaphors on stage.
If the history of British theatre is written responsibly, they will point a finger to the London International Mime Festival and say, this organisation provoked a change in the public's understanding of what was possible in theatre. And that change will live with all of us for the rest of our lives.
Movement and silence can be very eloquent. It can be very powerful. The days of people just striding onto a stage and declaiming Shakespeare, that's all long gone. Drama training in this country has changed. When I went to a drama school, we learnt how to speak verse. We did a bit of sword fighting and Baroque dance, but there was no physical training. I really liked the people who were doing this work. They were independent, free spirits, often trained abroad. They came from different traditions, and I felt a great kinship with their sensibilities. I was the programmer and manager of a little theatre in northwest London, the Cockpit. This was in 1976. And one of the artists that we used to book quite often was a wonderful mime and clown called Nola Ray.
Started it with Joseph. So it's probably called a mime festival because I'm a mime. And I think that mime is something that all actors, all theatre people should see and know about.
And one day she came to the theatre and she told me she'd been in a festival in Cologne in Germany, which was devoted entirely to mimes and clowns and physical theatre. And she had had such a wonderful time and big audiences. And she said, why don't we try something similar? And I'd got the following January practically completely empty. And it was a good month in London because there was not a lot happening. So we applied to the Arts Council and they gave us a little guarantee against loss. Nola knew one or two performers whom she invited. I think we put a call out in the Stage or something, and we ended up with 12 different companies. Each one of them did 2 or 3 performances.
The first one, it was like a tiny stage, and it looked like some sort of lecture hall or something, And we had names like Annie Stainer, Nola Ray, just in case. And it was a really special thing, because in those days there was nothing else.
And it was just looking out down the street and seeing people queuing. That was a really wonderful memory. That was the first time. We didn't expect it.
When we went to the Arts Council to try and get a grant, there wasn't a category for us because we weren't pure theatre, because we didn't say enough words, basically, and we weren't dance because it wasn't abstract.
We found there was a sort of latent, unsatisfied appetite for this sort of work. We got reviewed, it was all very positive. It was a stonking success.
In the early 80s, I ran Mime Action Group. The idea was that we form a pressure group to put pressure on the Arts Council for better funding, better recognition, but also pressure on Joseph Seelig to programme more British work as part of the Mime Festival, which of course we all loved and we all wanted to be in.
There were 2 years in the early 80s where there was no festival. First time the Arts Council decided, I was a member of the dance panel which looked after this sort of area of work. It was at a meeting at which I wasn't present, I have to say, to alternate funding years between the Mime Festival and Dance Umbrella.
I was working at the Place Theatre at the time, and the administrator said to me, would you like to programme a little mime festival? And of course I said yes, but I don't think that went down very well with Joseph, because there we were occupying his territory in an off year.
The second time there was no festival, I think, was 1986. And I'm sorry to say it was really because I was just exhausted.
Nola had said to me also, I'm not sure if Joe wants to carry this on. And at the same time, I'd met Helen, and I just thought Helen was great. I'm quite forceful, so I said, Joe, you're going to have to employ Helen, otherwise the whole thing's going to shit.
Joseph was a sort of unapproachable figure. He was quite lugubrious. His sense of humour was so dry. And he'd be there propping up the bar with his cigarette in one hand and a drink in the other. You just kind of admired him from afar, but, you didn't dare approach Joseph.
I could see that she was extremely capable. She was an organiser. She got good taste. What was not to like? And I'd been ploughing this lonely furrow, if you like, and here was somebody to work with.
He'd invited me to come and see something, and then we sat at a bus stop at Euston Station, and then he said, I had no idea about all the things you'd done and all of that, and would you like to come and help me with the festival? And I was completely delighted.
And there's very few arts partnerships like Joe and Helen. I can't name one really that has lasted as long as those two have.
They're very, very different from each other, so they took care of different things. Helen was like this extraordinary, heartful force, and Joe was like this outrageous, kind of naughty uncle.
I played Richard III for the English Shakespeare Company, and there was a reception afterwards in which we were speaking on stage, and I looked into the gathering of acts in the Perth Festival and saw Joseph Seelig, as I was speaking, doing this. And it still brings a smile to my face. He would always puncture something, Joseph.
I'm not somebody who believes in a festival that's got something for everyone. Just isn't possible. You've got to work out who your constituency is, and you've got to create and develop the best work you possibly can.
They were the space for the marginalised. Physical theatre, puppetry, ensemble work, and that invited people in this country, which is a primarily text-based culture, because of that guy, that guy that everyone goes on about, see ways of integrating things like the visual aspect, like the physical aspect, into theatre.
The work is poetic in the largest sense of the term. It's about suggesting something with something else, whether it's, through juggling, through moving objects, through making a cup of tea for an hour. It feels like it's the essence of theatre.
I often feel like they're a home for us hybrid, uncategorizables. So it's been an important place to show things, and sometimes when they were very raw right at the beginning, like in fact tonight we're performing something for the first time.
By influencing a lot of younger companies at different points, of which we were one, it allowed things to then maybe seep more into the mainstream.
When I got the opportunity to work on Warhorse, in the end at the National Theatre, the creative team, Toby Sedgwick on movement, Paulie Constable on lights, Ray Smith on design, they were all Mime Festival alumni.
You look at something like The Lion King, that's 20 years ago now. At that point, people going, wow, where did this come from? All the people working in the Mime Festival knew exactly where it came from.
Helen and Joseph are everywhere. So if you go in the world and turn up at a festival thinking, yeah, this is great, they will be there. They set the standard of the work that they're looking at to bring over.
Quand Joseph nous a dit, Hélène nous a dit, venez au Mime Festival, on était OK, finalement, here we are, London. Et c'était incroyable de découvrir le public anglais, quoi. Wow, c'était vraiment, c'est bouillonnant, quoi. C'est comme un volcan qui explose, quoi. C'était wow.
The Mime Festival really became a global hub for this work that was happening all over the planet, but had a commonality in its visual language.
Und dann war ich sehr angespannt im Publikum. Es war Queen Elizabeth Hall, 900 Leute, volles Haus. Und ich dachte, wenn sie nicht lachen, ist es eine Katastrophe. Und dann, sie haben das Stück geliebt. Also es gab ganz viele Lacher und es gab diese typischen englischen Lacher, die es nur in England gibt. So dreckig lacht niemand auf der Welt über Grausamkeit. Dieses so 900 Leute lachen dieses sehr dreckige Lachen. Das war der Himmel. So zu merken, es kommt hier auch an. Ja.
There is no other festival of that kind apart from the Mimos Festival in Périgueux in France, but who goes to Périgueux? It's in the middle of the Dordogne. This is London, you know what I mean? So it had a much bigger impact.
C'est vraiment le mime qui a permis à la compagnie d'aller jouer outre-mer. En fait, grâce aux professionnels qui sont venus voir les spectacles ici, il se fait qu'on a eu cette chance énorme d'aller jouer à New York, d'aller jouer à Hong Kong, d'aller jouer à Perth en Australie, d'aller jouer à Wellington. C'est aussi en allant dans des cultures autres qu'on revient un peu transformé, se posant les questions autrement.
They have a good mix of international work and UK work, and I think it's really important to have the international work to come in for the UK artists to see that and be influenced by that.
I made my first clown show called The Gift, and my friend said, come to Edinburgh for the festival. We found a venue, and they offered me a spot at midnight. But hey, who cares? And the audience was only 8 people, 12. But then one day I have this message from front of house saying, oh, there is somebody that wants to talk to you. I arrived there, I saw this man with a tweed suit and bow tie saying, I want to take your show to the Mime Festival.
We put something together, a little clown thing, and I think I wrote a handwritten note to Joseph Seelig saying, will you please consider us for the Mime Festival? We're doing a performance at Middlesex Polytechnic or something. And I thought he won't come, and he showed up.
When we started, we were just making sort of little duets in sort of, rehearsing in our kitchens and making work for pubs and clubs.
It galvanised us to write our first Arts Council bid. It's given me a real backbone, and it's made me be able to approach different situations, different institutions, different festivals with a lot more belief in what I make. I'm a career girl now.
Our first 6 or 7 shows we tailored to premiere at the Mime Festival, so it's kind of made a whole working structure. It was the place at which someone from the Times or Guardian would deign to come and review our shows. So honestly, I wonder what would have happened to us if we hadn't had that platform.
It gives you the profile, it gives you the respect to disseminate the work in another league. So you're not in a fringe at midnight, in an unknown venue. No, you are at the South Bank, at the Barbican.
Live performance, it's hard, and it's getting even harder, and especially after these challenging few years of the pandemic, gathering and being together in a room to experience something live is all the more fragile and special.
When you devise physical expressionistic work with no novel and no star, you really are bound by the belief that there is in the industry that you can pull it off. And so you really need people like Helen and Joseph to say, we back this guy, we back this company.
They'd have the stuff they knew worked in bigger venue, then they'd have a few things that they weren't sure about. If they worked, they'd brought them back. They actually began to have followings for shows and friendships around those shows. And in that way, they were able to create sustainability where a lot of festivals weren't.
There was a huge sense of connecting to a broader artistic community and imaginative endeavor. It was like a really important yearly check of like, we are still all here. Can we carry on doing what we're doing in the margins of things? Yeah, let's go.
I struck a deal with Joseph, standing in the street at 3 a.m. We'd both had a drink or two in Edinburgh. We were both slightly stumbling around each other. And he was going, we'll offer you this. And I was going, can't do it for that, Joseph. Well, what can you do it for? There's just got these two blokes. Where can that happen in this industry, where you feel that you trust someone, I think, but from both sides, to go, I know you, let's talk this out right now. And we did. And we shook hands. We had a hug, and that was the deal.
Experimentation, new forms of theatre, they don't just require extraordinary and talented people, it requires funding.
I feel like the whole UK is going through a rather derelict, barren time in terms of money and effort and energy putting in to produce the outskirts of the art.
We have a government which has its own agenda and it's not necessarily terribly friendly to the arts, especially new art forms, or as I've noted recently, old art forms either.
Joe and Helen and the staff work so hard each year to get, with diminishing resources, to still get it going and to still get this theatre paid. And all that work is at a certain moment became like pushing, porridge up the stairs with a spoon,
We did think about stopping it just after Brexit because suddenly borders were closed. So we just thought we have to go because there's no way to plan for this. And we can't just only programme small British things. That's just not what we're about.
I understand their position because with the Brexit, with the cut of funding on the Arts Council, the whole thing becomes a huge struggle. And a festival like that was produced with the pleasure, with the fun. It was a hardship, was difficult and hard work, but wasn't as it is now.
Then, of course, COVID hit, and actually it became apparent no one was going to be crossing any borders anytime soon. So we thought, let's do a digital festival. We can do something, we can support artists, and we put on a whole festival online that had over 100,000 views. And then the Arts Council said, actually, we're going to give everyone another year's worth of funding on top without having to reapply. And so that was the 2022 festival, which was kind of one of the first live theatre events that lots of people went back to. People were so excited to be back in the theatre, and I remember sitting in Gandini Juggling's Life in the Lillian Baylis at Sadler's Wells. That was the first show of our festival. It felt overwhelming to be in a theatre again, watching live performance.
Like many organisations now, if you're on standstill funding in a world where costs go up all the time, it's become really, really risky to the extent that it's almost unsustainable.
We definitely pushed on and we knew that we could do this festival, but it just started to feel that tail is starting to wag the dog. It feels like it's pushing us in a direction that it's not our intention to go in. We know what we are, we know what we do well, and we feel like there are too many compromises we're having to make.
We don't want to fail. We want the festival to finish on a high note. We are, I think I can say this at the end of this festival, we're solvent and a successful thing, which has been important, and that's what I'd like it to be remembered for.
We would rather that the festival stays this beautiful thing that lasted for 47 years and presented some of the finest artists, and that will live on in everyone's memory, and we can all leave it there.
I'm really unhappy that it is the last festival. They are extraordinary organisers, and I just tip my hat to them.
I just can't really accept that this is coming to an end. I can't accept that.
It's going to be a huge hole. Okay, it's catastrophic. I feel lost without them.
On coupe la culture, on coupe la... Donc ouais, ça fait mal. Je trouve c'est dommage, quoi. C'est un peu un enterrement, en fait.
There's no denying it's going to leave a void, not just in the midst of a bleak January month, but in the theatre culture of the country, because they were doing something quite unique and continued to change and develop. It never stood still.
I don't know where or how people will have a doorway now to explore that style of that sort of event.
There are people that I only ever see at the Mime Festival every January that I will bump into and have conversations with. And now, I don't know, I'm going to have to get their phone numbers from somewhere and actually ring them up and see them at another time. But I think it's been a forum to see amazing work and to widen perspective, but also to talk to people and meet people. There's not enough of that.
Even if we did not play in the Mater, we met other guys and saw other shows, and this community of physical theatre, that was our sort of our Easter or our Christmas. That's where we got together as a family and discovered new stuff.
It's always great to find your tribe, you know, and to find your people and to find people who resonate with the work. And the Mime Festival was that.
What's really important is to ask the question, where are the programmers with that level of vision and freedom now? Who is going to champion the next generation of madcap, inventive, impossible theatre makers? And it's very, very hard in the culture that we're building to imagine a place for those impresarios to exist.
It has been important for me because, of course, the first theatre I saw in London when I came from Paris was the first show that Complicité did, and I was not in that show, called Put It On Your Head. And that was my discovery of theatre here.
I'm at the moment in a place that's quite interesting where I've got a show that's being celebrated. The journey that I've been on and trying to get that kind of work into big shows would not have happened if it weren't for the Mime Festival.
One of the things that happens is that theatres and venues take less and less risks, and the work gets more and more boring. The worry is the Mime Festival are not constantly dropping extraordinary meals for people to eat, and the cuisine could become very tasteless.
There is a financial reality. We are a very small team. There's Helen and myself and some very loyal freelancers who've been working with us for many years.
To be a funded organisation, it's now so prescriptive that it makes it very difficult for such a small organisation as ours to function in the best way that it can. It takes too much of the energy and too much of the joy away from the work.
Right now, there's a great deal of anxiety in the theatre community in general.
There comes a moment where you just have to say, I think this is the moment to go.
There was a pragmatic reason to start the festival, and there's a pragmatic, practical, and I think very sensible reason why the festival will finish. Nothing lasts forever.
Well, I think people remember it with fondness. I think a lot of people will miss us a lot. I think I particularly feel for the smaller scale companies. I don't know what happens there. They'll be fine, you know. It's not like we're the only opportunity. But, yeah, it's emotional.
It's one thing to start a festival, which I did 47 years ago, but it's quite another to keep it going and make it grow and develop, which couldn't possibly have happened in the last 37 years, which is the length of time that Helen's been my festival partner and co-director.
Doing something which is very difficult in a culture like England is a gift to us all. They've given to it their lives, and you only get one of these miracles.
We'd always planned that one day we would wrap it up before we're too long in the tooth to not be able to give it the good ending that it deserves.
We're finishing the festival with the most wonderful show, Peeping Tom's Triptych, and I think it typifies everything that we've tried to do in the festival. It makes you see theatre and performance in a different way. It's astonishing and extraordinary, and it should make us feel really proud of what we've done.
In the last festival, there were 3 or 4 emerging companies that I'd mentored or had known in some way. So it has been continuing to nurture new talent.
I don't think people will stop making work, you know, we'll still be making work. It'll just be different in a sense that there will not be that platform. So it will be harder to get that attention.
Those audiences still want that work, and that audience got defined by the festival.
The Mime Festival has broadened the capacity for an audience to take in complex, poetic ideas from the stage. They've lit a fire.
We were talking about Thatcher's Britain in the 70s and how art will grow one way or the other. I'm an optimist in that I think they'll be enormously missed, but I think they've left enough of a groundwork and enough seeds in the ground that lots more will grow.
We are actually in a cultural revolution right now. Artists do not solve problems, they play problems. And in that playing, they give our wonderful audiences, who I absolutely respect, the chance to reflect on difference, and they might change the world.
They're not fading out. They're going, here's an ending. Like a grief process, you feel the loss of it and you go, oh shit, oh fuck, the Mime Festival's gone. Then you tell the stories of what was important in that, because they will be the embers that can create new things.
I want to continue working with her because I know she's the best possible partner in this particular crime for me.
We're not dead and buried, and we will find a platform to promote some things. You know, I hope it will be, I don't know, a legacy series of some sort. Some of the venues want to continue working, so, you know, we'll just see what we can do to support the sector that isn't a festival in the same way, but that nevertheless throws a net over the work, which I love.
I don't know if any of us knew that this small festival that at the time was just a few solo clowns and mimes would go on to be this amazing supporter of international theatre of all sorts.
You're competing with the rest of the world and improving your skills because of all that international input. But you can't have that without the international input coming here.
We're collaborating with something like 9 countries right now on work exchanges and bringing work over in showcases and stuff. Without the Mime Festival, probably wouldn't have happened.
They'll be remembered for infusing this dark, dreary month of January with an explosion of work that is tantalising and adorable and, very importantly, very, very influential.
I've learnt things, I've had thrilling, adventurous experiences, I've been touched and flummoxed and astounded, and it's got a really unique, diverse flavour.
It was just endlessly joyous and physically inventive, and it opened a whole door for me about the way that performance could be.
This activity is full of generosity and love, and I think that's what will be remembered.
There's been a very active creation of innovative contemporary puppet theater all over the world for 50 years, but it's still new to so many audiences. And so a festival like this legitimizes this art form.
It's been interesting from day one. I think the artistic work has been extraordinary. I wish it wasn't having to be remembered. I wish it could carry on forever.
When people come and see the work at the festival, their eyes are opened to this extraordinary world that's out there that is beyond text.
What we want to offer our audiences are the most amazing experiences from around the world. And this work is what's happening around the world. So if we don't include that in our program, we're limiting things in some way.
You need passion, you need commitment, and you need heart to stick at something for as long as they have and to do it so beautifully.
I know they won't stop. I know that they can't stop. They have so much knowledge and so much integrity that I just can't ever imagine them stopping.
What excites me most is how can we broaden people's horizons into what is live performance, and that is certainly what the Mime Festival has done.
The Mime Festival gave us courage and showed us what was possible.
I think also never taking it too seriously. You know, they've actually really enjoyed it, and that's evident in the programme of work they put across.
They've done it with very little money. They've just done it through love. And I really want to thank both of them for everything they've brought into my life.